Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to my favorite time of the year for BookTube. I love all of the best and worst of 2019's, all the year in review stuff. I love that kind of being reflective and thinking as we take a step forward. And last year I didn't really get to do any of this kind of thing because I'd only had my channel for like 3 months, and so I didn't really have a lot to reflect on. But this year I have officially been on for a calendar year, so I can do all of the videos that I want, and I'm going to do 4 ones essentially, each with 5 books. The worst, i.e. the literal just hated them. The most disappointing, in which I went in with high expectations that weren't met. The best, aka these were just my favorites of the year. And the most surprising, aka the books where I didn't have the biggest expectations, but they were mainly exceeded. So let's start off with maybe the more negative ones. And so today we're going to be talking about the worst books of 2019. Now, in most cases, some of this might have been some of my expectations, but in general, these were books that I literally just really didn't like. And this video will probably do better than all the others because for some reason, worst book lists are just more fun. So let's jump right into it. First up is Behold the Harvest Moon by Stephen M. King. No, not that one. No relation. This is what was supposed to be a young adult fantasy tale about a young boy that stumbles into this strange other world. I actually know the author, kind of, technically. I've been in the same room as him before. And I was really hoping to like it, but it was just bad. Beyond the actual like ambiance of the world, which felt cool and felt other, the plot raced through and it felt very lonely because like no side character ever stuck. It was basically just this boy, and it had like a pseudo Alice in Wonderland feeling, and also the kid did not talk like a kid. I think he was supposed to be like 14 years old, but he would have these like long inner monologues, all of these like 10-cent words, and it's like, I work with boys near that age. They don't think like that. And my husband works with middle school kids, and he can tell you boys that age don't think in that way. So these overly verbose inner monologues just made it feel so weird. And while the ambiance was pretty cool, not a lot was done with it. I think I gave this book 2 stars, maybe even 1. I know I included it on a best and worst of indie books as the worst book. And the good news is that I haven't really been in the same area as the author, and it's never probably going to come up. So good thing for there, because I would not want to have to talk about this book with its author because I would not have a lot of nice things to say. Up next was the book that I could rant about for a while, and that is Heritage by D.E. Morris. This is a YA fantasy all about a young queen who has to fight back against the evil king in defense of her isles that she is a part of. And in general, the big problem I had with this one was it is trying to convert the reader to Christianity at all times. And what I mean by that is the character seems to have grown up with this religion, and they have a God-type character, but for some reason, she has no clue about their Jesus-type character. I believe he is called the Deliverer, which makes absolutely no sense because the people that raised her, her adoptive parents, are full believers in that religion, so there's no reason within the world for her not to know about this dude. And there is literally, and I am not joking, a beat for beat retelling of the crucifixion, only with like fantasy words in between. There's literally an entire chapter in which one character is telling her the story about the Deliverer, and it is literally the crucifixion story, and it takes up a whole chapter. And I'm looking at this going, this is blatantly trying to convert the reader to Christianity, and it's very heavy-handed, and it's full of other like standard flaws for poorly written YA fantasy. But the reason that it makes this list is because it felt so shady, because nothing in the marketing and the synopsis and any of it has any reference to that kind of religious stuff, but it is so heavy-handed within it. And I hate that. Like, if you want to have a faith-based book, fine, have a faith-based book. Don't try to hide it so you can spring it on the reader with the hope that they'll magically convert to a religion. It just, again, I could rant, but that would make this video, well, actually, it might make this video more fun to watch, but I don't want to get in that headspace, so let's move on. The Sekhmet Bed by Libby Hawker. I could have put this on my most disappointing reads. However, it was just particularly bad enough that I decided it should go here. I wanted to love this book because it is based in ancient Egyptian essentially, like, basically nonfiction. However, a lot of liberties were taken that didn't need to be taken and took the story in a very girl-hating light. This revolves around Hatshepsut's mother. You might know Hatshepsut as being the female pharaoh, and it's all about her mother kind of coming to prominence as the great wife, and it's all about her competing with her sister, who is also a wife of the pharaoh, because this is ancient Egypt, and there's so much girl hate. So much girl hate, so much fighting with each other, and then the protagonist starts doing horrible things to get power, and it all backfires on her, and then she spends like the next chunk of the book just complaining. It has the birth of Hatshepsut as well as some of her early years, and it keeps trying to talk about how she's got this boy Ka, or this boy soul, and at first I was like, I guess that would be kind of cool, you know, a kind of fantasy transgender thing, but the problem is that it makes it sound like it's because she has that boy Ka that she is fit to rule. Not because a woman could be fit to rule, but because she has a boy's soul in a girl's body that she can be pharaoh one day. And that never sat right with me. You can do a transgender story without that kind of hidden connotations of a woman is only a good leader if she leads like a man nonsense. So all in all, there was just so many things, and I forced myself to read it because I was doing a 24-hour readathon and I wanted to read as many books as possible, and this book was part of the reason that I really did not enjoy that readathon, and I probably won't do another one anytime soon, if ever again, because it was just that horrible. Next is Blindness by Jose Saramago. This was the group pick from my group in the Tome Infinity readathon, and at first I was really intrigued by the concept. This is all about a world that essentially goes completely blind one day, and no one really knows why. The blindness just spreads to all these different people, and we follow a small group of people struck by this blindness, save for a one-sighted woman, and they kind of have to go through life. Now, the first thing that was horrible about this book is its formatting. There is no dialogue tags. There is no, like, separation for dialogue. Dialogue is just plopped in the middle of sentences with no indication. So as a result, I read all dialogue with the same monotone tone that I read, like, descriptions of the horrible blindness they were facing. Like, I couldn't get it in my head to give the characters different tones and different expressions because there was nothing separating it out. So that was the first part, and I struggled. I had to read this book in very small chunks every day and read like another light book to break it up because I literally just could not get through this. And then on top of that, the way this discusses blindness is highly offensive to anyone that's actually blind, because I had been watching a lot of the YouTuber Molly Burke, who is dedicated to sharing what it is like to be a blind woman in, you know, the modern day, and she talks a lot about how this idea that it ends her life or she should be focused on a cure is really offensive and is bringing her down. And then this book keeps talking again and again about how blindness is a kind of death and blindness is the worst thing ever. Like, no, if the entire world suddenly went blind, like, yeah, there'd be problems. Obviously. There'd be things to get around. But the idea that, like, if everyone went blind, suddenly, like, everything would be horrible, no. There are entire species of animals that are more or less visually impaired and or blind, and they can get along fine. You can adapt. So in general, I didn't really mind that they didn't really explain the blindness because they don't. That wasn't a thing for me. It was one of those things where it was such a big cataclysm that you were never going to come up with a, like, really intriguing cause for it, and that wasn't the point of it. But it just felt so dry and so offensive to people who are actually blind. And, oh yeah, trigger warnings for a very drawn-out gang rape scene, and I really wish someone had warned me ahead of time because it is straight uncomfortable. But anyway, this thing has won awards and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, this might be one of those cases where people were just so obsessed with a high concept and fancy language that they gave it an award, because if you look at the plot and the themes, like, not that great. Up next is actually a review book, and I was determining whether or not it was, like, you know, in the right spirit to put a review book on here, because obviously a lot of the authors that I review watch my videos, and I don't want to, like, throw too much shade at anyone. However, this author responded to my review, which I gave a fairly low rating, and was pretty okay with it, and even mentioned that, like, yeah, this is kind of a story I just had to get out, so I don't feel as bad including it on this list. So, to it, the book was bad. The author's a really cool dude. And that is Battle to Save the Soul of the Universe by Dwayne C. Huffman. This was looking like a schlocky fun sci-fi when I first saw it, when he first gave it to me to review. However, it's just very poorly written. There are some really cool ideas, but they don't have any weight because it rushes through it. And you have the chosen one trope, which I'm not a big fan of, although that's more of like an artistic thing. But like, it would tell you things straight up. Like, these two characters would meet, and then 5 pages later, it would tell you they were in love. Watching characters fall in love is like the best part of the book romance. Don't just tell me. Show me the stares and the softly whispered things. Like, show me that. Don't just flat out tell me, oh yeah, they're in love now. Like, and so much plot was shoved into this. I mentioned in the review that this book alone, if you laid out the plot, like, beat by beat, it looks like this should have been its own trilogy laid out. And I don't even think this book was a full 300 pages. Yeah, not even 300 pages. And it had enough plot points to have a trilogy. They're all just smushed together. However, the one thing that I really loved was this awesome, I would call it a sci-fi concept called the Van Wan Ung, which is basically when a bunch of psychics get together and using all their psychic powers combined, they create an entity. They basically create, it's not an AI because it's not artificial, but they create a new psychological entity from their connected psychic powers. And what really intrigued me was at the end of this ceremony, this psychic entity could basically decide to not let itself dissipate. It could basically decide, hey, I want to keep living. I'm not going to let you guys go. I loved that concept. It wasn't fairly well utilized in this book, but like I've already like kind of like whittled that away for exploration, like my own writing. I loved that concept so much. And in general, that's kind of the theme of this book, was a lot of cool concepts and cool plot ideas, but the actual execution of those was just not good. And this might not, if I'm strictly speaking, there's probably other books that I reviewed that might rank below this one, but this was the one where I knew the author would be chill with me adding it onto this list because Dwayne Huffman is a really chill author in that respect, and it responded with total grace to that review, and I think so highly of him as a result of that. So you can hate on the book, but don't you give the author hate. I will come after you. So that is it, my 5 worst books of 2019. Be on the lookout for some of the other videos coming up. I love this time of year, even if me hating on books for, what is it, like 15 minutes now, doesn't seem like it. But if you had any horrible reads, please let me know. If you have a worst books of 2019 video of your own, link those down below. I love watching these kind of best worst of 2019 videos. They're my favorite. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.